under 3 million in assets. They had a current advisor they were working with. They're both self-employed. They're just trying to kind of figure out retirement. So I was able to put together, a couple ideas for them, based off our, conversation we had on the phone. When we had our initial meeting, there's a lot of skepticism, right? He was kind of like, "Yeah, I'm talking to you and two other guys. I currently have an advisor, and we just kept having meetings. And I pretty much would bring the conversations or what I was working on to these calls. And I would say, "Hey, he's asking me about fees. What should my response be, or how would you guys approach that?" And last week, Ermos, kind of gave me some ideas of how to address the fee conversation. So I met with this client about 4 or 5 times. We had meetings, and last week we closed. We're bringing about $2.5 million of assets over. So that's kind of in the pipeline. 800,000 going into an annuity, and the rest will be going into AUM.
And my understanding is you had another sale of a
Yeah.
$100,000
So
annuity the same
yep.
week.
Yep. And I had another $150,000 annuity closed. It was actually, I was kind of going back and forth with another advisor. They were talking to me and another advisor. And really what it came down to is what he had showed them. I knew more about that product than he did. And I was able to show them, hey, this is like the ins and outs of this product. Are you aware of this? Are you aware of what the returns are, like the cap rates, all this stuff? And they weren't. And then I, proposed a different plan for them, and they liked it. It was simple. It was just I don't know if you guys are familiar with a MIGA. It's just kind of like a bank CD. It's like, hey, you get a fixed rate for 3 years. It's 5%. Just really simple story. They wanted to move forward with that. So it was a $150,000 annuity for them. And then that client that moved over 2.5 million. So that was all on Friday last week. So it was a very good Friday going into the weekend.
So that happened in one day, actually.
Yep.
Wow. Well, hopefully you celebrated. So my understanding is your commissions are about $100,000 on just those two sales alone.
Yep. And then got two other really big cases in the pipeline as well that um, is going to be between the two would be like around 2 million in assets if I get those two to come over.
When you get those two, because that's why you're
When
here, right?
when that's why I'm here.
Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm gonna ask a couple more follow-up questions, Brooks,
Yep.
but I just want to emphasize, and in case you missed it, Brooks mentioned this call. He's actually referring to PlanCraft. So
Yep.
can you spend maybe 30 seconds or a minute and just explain how just being part of this call and this community has helped you convert those 100,000 in commissions? Because again, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what do you think your odds are of having closed those two big clients if you never showed up to a PlanCraft session, never spoke to me, never spoke to Andy?
Yeah, I'd probably still be having meetings. I know we were joking last week, like you're having the fifth meeting, right? And you still haven't gotten to move forward, right? But it's just so many different ideas come from this call. Obviously, Ermos and Andy have some great insight, but even other advisors, we're talking about, how to have a conversation or just kind of disconnect yourself from the result, right? So many times, like we see this prospect come through, they have all these assets, and I know how I get. I'm like, man, could you imagine that being a client? And you just kind of start thinking of like all the possibilities there. And you kind of got to disconnect yourself from that and just have a conversation with them like you would with any prospect. So, that's just like a couple things I've picked up just by being on the Plan Crafts call, but there's like just so much knowledge with all the different advisors and this network.
Awesome. And one last thing, I mean, you're welcome again, you're welcome to share as much as you want, and I'm sure that
Yep.
I'll get some questions from the group. But you actually made me laugh when we spoke on the phone. Because for those who don't know, a couple of weeks ago, there was a Planswell, we'll call it a conference, I guess, on a ship. So it was on a Monday, and of course,
Hmm.
anyone who's ever been on a boat knows that the internet is almost non-existent. So there was no chance of Andy and I doing our podcast session live that day. So we had a pre-recorded one. And if I recall, you said
Yeah.
that it just happened to be the the one where we how
Yeah.
to,
Consequence of inaction. Yeah.
right? And did you tell me that you kind of like you wrote it down word for word and you basically used it?
Yeah. Yeah. So that call last week, it was like the consequence of inaction. Okay. This is what'll happen if you don't use our plan, if you don't go with us. And I just had it on a Word document, just typed up. And it was just very straightforward. Like, if you don't move forward, you're not going to make $70,000 this year because that's what the fixed rate was for him in the annuity. And that just like it's right there in writing. And he was like, okay, let's move it. Let's move forward. Let's get everything going. So I mean, it was just great, kind of a way to position and get the close.
Yeah, so I'll just kind of emphasize that a little bit. So what we teach here is, most advisors talk about ROI. So what is your return if you follow my advice, right? So they'll say, if you follow this, that, and the other, we'll save you $6,000 in taxes. What we teach is the opposite, which is to talk about the cost of inaction, because we know through studies psychologically, people will run away from pain quicker than they'll run towards pleasure. So instead of saying by doing this, that, and the other, you're going to save $7,000 in taxes, what we would say is, listen, Brooks, you are already overpaying $7,000 in unnecessary taxes. And if you don't make a decision right now, if you don't follow through on these recommendations, you will continue to lose $7,000 in taxes. And again, this is just psychology. People are more likely to take action to remove a pain than they will to gain a pleasure. So that's the reason why that works. And Brooks, I guess you're proof that it does work.
Yeah. And recorded podcasts, are beneficial.
Of which, by the way, no one listens to, by the way, because we track that stuff and it drives Andy and I crazy. I can tell guys, I'm telling you right now, you are either paying for or probably have paid for coaching courses for thousands of dollars. And I'll guarantee you, just the Andy and Ermos live sessions, if you went back and listened to that stuff, is probably 10 times better than anything you paid for, and it's free. And no one watches it because we can see the views and they're non-existent.
Yeah.
So, guys, I'll open up the questions. I mean, obviously, I'm not going to sit here and tell you, oh my God, especially the new guys, Mark and Kevin. Yeah, welcome aboard. You're going to make 100,000 next week. That's obviously not going to be the case, or you never know. But obviously, this is a great story. Not so much that Brooks closed so much business, because that happens a lot. I just love the fact, Brooks, if I do may say, we're struggling a little bit, but
Yeah.
follow the
Mhm.
process, follow the script, comes to these sessions, learns, moves on, implements stuff, and now he himself will tell you that it's kind of like night and day from where he was a few months ago, or maybe even a few weeks ago to where he is today.
Yeah, I will just say real quick, like, yeah, I went through a few months where I hadn't really closed anything, and I was still just trying to, you know, pull up with leads, get after the business, right, and just keep building on the process and like keep coming to the calls, and now, like I said, it's night and day, and it's changed.
Awesome. Yeah, I'll open up the questions. Anybody want to have a question for Brooks?
I do, if that's okay.
Absolutely.
I'm as you were going through your story, I was reminded of someone I spoke to yesterday. So, new contact, $2 million in assets, 72 years old, self-managed. He's managing everything on his own, and was just looking for some more information. The first time I called him earlier today, he answered on his Apple Watch and asked me to call back later, but he actually called me back first. So I know he's someone who wants to talk, right? And I don't think I necessarily did as good a job as I wanted to on that call, because when he called back, I wasn't quite expecting it. And he went to a place where I wasn't expecting him to go to. So where things kind of left off, I tried to set up a follow-up meeting. He left it open to, hey, let's talk again in the future, but wouldn't set a date. And his big concerns were, I've been managing this on my own. I have a lot of dividend because I'm in Canada, so he has a lot of dividend paying bank stocks. But he thinks he's going to get to the point where he doesn't want to manage it on his own. He's concerned about fees because he didn't like the idea of, paying that kind of stuff, right? So just some advice about how you might take a conversation in the next step, or I know I didn't give a lot of details, but it was, I'm relatively new to Planswell. So I was curious how you might see that going.
I have plenty to say, but I'd rather open up to the group first.
You have plenty to say. That's great.
Um, I would say, ask questions, right? Like, he mentioned, I don't know if I want to manage this in the future. Well, just ask him, what's that look like? Like, if you partner with someone, like, what does that look like to you? If you're not managing it yourself, right? And I just keep, I'm reading a sales book right now, and that's all it talks about is like the psychology of selling really is asking questions and just kind of seeing where they're at. Like that's really what you're trying to do. Like you probably had a solution right off the bat for them in your head, but that's really not what they wanted to hear. And really what they wanted
Which
to
I
do.
didn't want to get into, which is my
Yeah.
problem. I got to that and I'm
Yeah.
like, a little bit of like, oh, this guy has $2 million. I wasn't expecting this. And then I was trying to
It
close before I built rapport.
Yeah. So like the mindset is like think of yourself more as like a therapist, right? Where you're asking questions and you're just trying to like see where they're coming from. And then just when you get a pressure point, like, my guy, he's got 2.5 million in the market and he's worried after the election, if it takes a dip, his whole retirement outlook changes, right?
Yeah.
So that's what I just kept going back to. Like, if you don't make any changes, this is what's going to happen. Like, are you okay with that? So that's what I would encourage you to just keep asking questions.
So the reason I'm laughing is because I'm listening to Brooks and I'm thinking like he's basically channeling myself and Andy. He's become
Yeah.
like a clone of us. And I mean that in the most genuine way, by the way, Brooks, in a complimentary way. He's absolutely right. The problem that a lot of advisors, the problems that they create is they know too much. They get on these calls and they think that they have to provide some sort of like knowledge or value or a solution, which unfortunately is the absolute opposite what you should be doing. All you should be doing is building rapport and asking questions because what you're trying to do is find out what their pain points are. Once you find out what their pain points are, then you can come up with solutions, and that's what's going to get them to gravitate towards you. So, Kevin, you mentioned your story there. Did you end up giving advice, or you kind of bit your tongue a bit?
I was trying to set him up for a follow-up meeting. I mentioned a couple solutions, which I realized I shouldn't have done now. But I was trying to get him to commit to a meeting next week, and he wouldn't do it. But he said, "Hey, I'm not ready to meet right now. Let's keep the conversation going." So I do have the opportunity to. I think he's a guy who just likes to have a phone conversation. So I'll call him back next week, midweek, and just say, "Hey, I was thinking about our last conversation," and maybe try to reset a little bit.
Okay. I'll get to, Sabrina. I'll get to you like in 1 second. So it's Kevin. You mentioned something that we also talk about here as well. No one likes to go to meetings. No one. Like no one wakes up in the morning and says, "Oh God, I'm so happy today. I got a day full of meetings." Right. So, and I get it. It's ingrained, and essentially, it's what it is. But it's funny. Like he even said to yourself, you were trying to book a meeting, and he said, "I want to keep it more of a conversation."
Mm-hmm.
So that is what we should be asking people. We should never be asking for meetings. We should be asking for conversations, discussions, chats. Because meeting sounds very formal. So you want to keep it casual at this point in time. So I think if you reach out to this gentleman and we can definitely talk more about your situation and you ask him for a quick chat, then he's more likely to say yes to it. Sabrina, you got a question or a comment?
Yeah, no comment. I made some calls this week, and I think the main thing is he doesn't want to, like, it's time. He doesn't want to spend looking at his portfolio. So finding out what is important to him, like what would he rather spend his time doing? So is he already retired? You said he was 72. Is he already retired?
Yeah, he's retired. Yeah.
So like I had a conversation the other day. The guy was retiring next year in April. I was like, well, do you have any like, how do you plan on spending your retirement? What kind of hobbies do you have? And he started opening up about his music career. And he's like, oh, I'm in a jazz band and like all this other thing. So like, that's really what he wants to focus his time on. He doesn't want to worry about if the market ups and downs. So like just finding out like what their goals are, like what's important to them. Like I like to say, like you wouldn't have an electrician do your plumbing, so you don't have to DIY your finances. So you can go to like a financial professional, but just finding out what's actually important to them, not managing their money. And then, well, if we can help you achieve like getting your time back in your day so you can do that, more of that with you and your family, Like, would you be open to setting up a time so we can dive a little bit deeper just to see if anything's missed? So like understand their pain, but also understand their vision, help them achieve their vision without the pain.
So specifically, how it relates to you, Kevin, is he said to you that he doesn't feel like it's like he wants to continue to manage his money. Is that basically what he said?
Yeah, he's doing it right now. He's not sure how much longer he wants to do that because he wants to go on and do other things, right? So
what were those other things?
Don't know.
So that's the question at that point. That would have been the question that you should have asked. Fantastic. I totally get it. You reached a point where it's maybe no longer fun, but what would you be doing in place of all the time you've been spending managing your money? And then he'll mention, this is what I love to do. Well, guess what? That's a pain point, because if I love doing A, but B, which is managing the money, is preventing me from doing the A, then that's a pain point now, right? And that's where you can come in, not now, but later on, and say, by doing X, Y, and Z, I'll be able to take this off your plate. It provides you more time to do what you love. Would you find this helpful? And they're going to say yes, and then the conversation moves forward from there. Make sense, Kevin?
Yeah.
Okay. Andy, I'm going to get to you, but Michael, you had your hand up. You had something to say. Don't go dark on me, Michael.
I had my hand up by accident, which is why I intentionally lowered it. But as usual, I mean, it's the right questions or the right conversation.
Right.
And many, I often listen in when I can. I celebrate 21 years this year, and I just at about year 8, I realized questions are much more important than having the perfect answer.
Awesome. Thanks, Michael. Andy.
Yeah, this was still for Kevin. Sorry, we're focusing on you, Kevin, but I think this is really valuable stuff. Is, the thing that popped into my mind is asking, what does he like about managing his money himself? Right? Getting it, and then transitioning into what don't you like about it? Which can now lead to the what checks and balances, or what would happen if something had been overlooked? How would that impact you?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I know one pain point that he actually brought up is he makes about $90,000 a year off of his dividends, and he was concerned that would keep up in the future based on market changes. He mentioned the U.S. election as well. He didn't know where things were going to go next year, well, how that might impact his dividend paying income, which was his main source of income in his retirement. He didn't want to be taking out funds, right? So,
Kevin, does dividend? I think the answer is yes, but does dividend income affect OAS?
No.
Okay, because if it did,
Yeah.
it'd be like almost a double taxation, right? He's paying tax on dividends, and he's also getting OAS clawbacks, so it's kind of like he's getting taxed.
Oh yes, it would impact. So OAS clawbacks. I was thinking that the other one, sorry, just drew a blank on it.
So but did he bring that up?
No, he didn't bring that up at all.
Okay, so I'm just saying that, like, another tactic that you can use is to shine a light on something that he doesn't already know that's hurting him. So he may not even be aware that he is not even getting his full old age security pension. So I guess you're gonna have to do a little bit of math and figure out, or hopefully he'll share a tax return or something where you can actually see exactly how much he's earning and how much of his OAS is getting clawed back. I'm sure he loves dividends, but he may not be realizing those dividends are actually costing him other benefits.
Yeah.
Question from Kevin. Are you in the U.S. or Canada?
Canada.
Okay, no. I was going to say, because it could affects his IRMA contributions to Social Security over here, and then it depends, on, like I said, we've been talking about taxes as well, but you're in Canada, all right?
Yeah.
And maybe we got to get like little U.S. flags or Canadian flags or something.
So we know.
Yeah. Well, I have a Canadian flag on my desk back here, wherever it is. So yeah.
Kevin's ahead of the curve. Rob.
Oh, yes. Hello, everybody. Thank you. My question is around how you engage people who are not answering the phone. Is there a way to do that? Do you just keep calling until ultimately they block you, or you give up, or do you mix it up with texts and email or any other sort of thing? And of course, an adjunct to that would be, what's the order of operations? How do you do that? And that's basically it. How do you engage people without just giving up, or do you just give up after a point?
That is a good question for the group.
No one wants to posit an answer.
Well, Rob, you know, we're financial advisors and we're all wallflowers. Like we don't talk for a living or anything like that. Anybody?
I can say what I'm starting to implement. It's similar to what George does, the email drip. Like if there's different programs out there where you can get like a weekly newsletter with content that'll automatically go out to those leads. You know, it's just a way to like kind of get your face in front of them. You know, they're not answering their phones, but usually what I do, you know, I'll try calling, you know, 5 or 6 times, maybe, you know, sometimes I'll go to 10 before I maybe shoot a text message or leave a voicemail. But you know, that's the one thing you can't really control. You can't control someone picking up their phone. The other thing I've recently started this week, because it just came out, is those PDFs, those one sheet PDF plans that Planswell has now. I've started to text message those to folks.
Ah,
And so I'm trying to see if I can get some traction with that. It's still like really early, but you know, because in that PDF you can put like, hey, here's what we see on your plan. Like, here's what you're doing well. Here's a couple things that we notice, and then like in mine, I have like a call to action, like to, you know, take the next step, fill out this survey. And it's like there's a little link to a survey that I have. So that's, you know, kind of another way that you can kind of think to try to engage someone that's not answering the phone. But I would try to call them before you like send the text message or email or anything like that.
great advice, Brooks. And I will also add, Rob, are you new to Planswell?
Yes, pretty much. But I used to work for Planswell. I was the VP of corporate development there. That's how Andy knows me.
That's amazing.
That's why I said, "Hey, Rob."
Yeah.
Well, welcome back. So a couple of things to consider off the bat. One, you may want to call somebody that's not in your contacts to see what your name looks like when it comes up.
Well, it's very interesting that you should mention that, because I wasn't getting, almost nobody was picking up. And then that was something I was looking at. How is it coming up? And so I had to change my phone provider. We're here, for those of us who are all Canadian and may not have done this, it turned out that it's only Rogers will put your name out to all the different carriers. So if you're on Bell, for example, I think someone from a Bell phone to another Bell phone, they'll see it. But if it's from, say, to another carrier, it won't. So it's only Rogers that does it. For those of you, I've gone through that pain recently, and I noticed a marked uptick in people actually picking up. But of course, a lot of people still don't.
Okay. That's very important, because sometimes you get people saying no one ever picks up, and then we find out later that their phone shows up on the other end as likely spam. So
Right.
they had to fix that, and then once they fixed that, then all of a sudden people started answering it. But you wouldn't know that, because if you and I are buddies, Rob, and you're in my contact list and you call me, it'll show up as Rob. It won't show up as likely spam. But if you call somebody who you are not in their contact list, it'll show up as something different. That's why you need to call somebody that's not already a friend of yours. And the second thing I would mention is, are you at the very least double dialing?
Yes, I do that.
Okay.
That I found that to be effective. Well, more effective than not doing it.
Okay.
But I guess there's no real way of knowing for sure that they may have blocked you, though, right? Has anybody come up with a way to decipher that you're most likely blocked, and then at some point there's no point in calling anymore?
That's a good question. I don't know. Does anybody know? Does it go straight into voicemail?
I do know. So I'm in USA. I don't know where some people are. Yeah, sometimes depending on your carrier will tell you that you have been blocked, or and it'll say like notification, and you'll also get what Ermos was talking about, like that direct voicemail. It'll ring and go to voicemail pretty quickly. The way I found that out is because I I'm probably the annoying one that has done the triple dial. So on the triple dial, I've noticed that some people have done it immediately. Maybe to my downfall, but I took the risk for you guys. Hopefully it helps you. But so yeah, so now, but I also have done the triple dial and it did work. So I don't know. Take that for whatever it's worth. Um, and so you can know depending on your cell phone provider, it'll tell you your number is blocked.
It does change as well. I was working with an advisor down in the US and had a number that was through close.com. They provide, the number, and it was fine. It was fine. It was fine. And then, I for some reason had the inkling to periodically check, and I went and put it in through caller ID test, and it said likely spam, like it was coming up likely spam. And I even sometimes I had prospects say, and just so you know, when you called, it came up likely spam. I don't know why I answered it. Or sometimes it was somebody that knew me and picked it up or knew I was calling at that time and assumed it was me and then said, hey, just so you know, you came up likely spam. So these things change. So just because you think you crossed the T and dotted the I today, that doesn't mean that T and I will be crossed and dotted a month from now. So you've got to stay on top of that stuff. It should be probably your monthly, starting the month off to-do list or checklist of did I go look and see how my number pops up? Because obviously you're not gonna speak, you're gonna speak to way fewer people if you're coming up likely spam. I don't pick up any likely spams from anybody calling me unless I recognize the number in some way or I'm expecting a call from a potentially unknown number. So just a little bit of a tip there.
Or unless it's pizza calling, right, Andy?
Yeah. Except that I hate pizza, so I wouldn't even pick up that phone number.
Okay.
Well, I would add too, Rob, for everyone, that it does take between 8 and 12 contacts or calls before the average prospect will pick up. That's those are industry statistics. Not necessarily plans. Well, I imagine it might be a little bit better since will recognize the name, or not the name, but they'll recognize. Well, yeah, I guess it would be the same, to be honest. So you're looking at 8 to 12. So if you're only making 3 or 4 phone calls and you're kind of giving up already, you are falling way short of where you should be. Like you should be calling at least 10, 12 times before you move on to texts and emails.
So can I ask a follow-up question to that when in calling? So, okay, it makes sense to me that you need to call 8 to 12 times, and it makes sense to me that you need to try and get with a provider, whatever, that can put your name out there. But the other reason why people may not be picking up is perhaps time of day, time of week. Do you have any thoughts on that? What's best? Because I haven't nailed it down yet what I think is the best time for me to everybody's going to be different, but any idea about averages of what's best?
So I have a technique I use. I try to do 1 week like Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and then the next week like Tuesday, Thursday, and then I try to alternate between like mornings and evenings as well.
Okay, that's good. That's good advice. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, usually 9 to 11 and 4 to 7 are kind of the sweet spots. I mean, you may remember this, Rob, from Plansville 1.0 days, but we always had a big push on Friday afternoons because that was Trap Friday, right? Mm-hmm. People are just wanting to look busy for the last couple hours of work, and they'll pick up the phone and and try to kill those hours before they get to call it quitting time for the weekend. So my own experience is Fridays either tend to be like absolutely killer and amazing, or it's a graveyard. I don't know why that is. But I mean, I remember talking to George Bigger, who probably many of you know, just checking in on him one day, and he's like, "Hey, Andy, let's talk on Monday. I've already booked 5 meetings today," which it was a Friday. And he had just been kind of complaining a few days earlier about not getting anybody on the phone. And there he goes and books 5 appointments in a span of like 2 hours. Right. So unfortunately, it is hit or miss. Right. Like You know, some days you have the mojo and you can say nothing wrong and everybody's picking up what you're laying down. Other days you can't buy a conversation or even a pickup. It's why consistency is so important.
Well said. Okay, so I'd love to open it up. Mark, I'm not sure if you're still there, but because you're new, we'd love to hear from you if you have any questions. Anybody else brand new? Okay. Kevin, did we answer all your questions? Did you want more information or maybe some more tips on how to handle that $2 million prospect?
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. That was great. I was been making some notes on the other conversations as well, and I'm gonna need to double check my number because I actually did do a digital phone contract this week, and I thought I had double checked all my numbers now, and I started using that for my conversations, but as opposed to my personal cell phone, which I was using the last 2 weeks. Because I was starting to get callbacks at weird time of night.
What provider are you with, Kevin?
I picked Dialpad.
Okay.
I like, they have like real-time transcriptions and AI summaries of your calls. So it's kind of cool that way. But yeah. And I called my partner and a friend, and they both saw different things. One saw just a number and one saw my name. So I don't know what's going to actually show up, but we'll go with that for a little bit.
I just put in the latest version of my personal script into the chat there. So if you want it, it's different than the Planswell script. You know, I know Brooks has opinion on it. But yeah, if you want an alternative there, it's what I use, and I think it's something anybody can do. And I've updated it, Brooks, just so you know, and Sabrina, with the bucket questions as option 1.
I think you sent me that. I saw it in one of the ones you sent me, and I have been using the bucket questions. Those are great. But I would say use that script if you're not. Check it out and you know, see if it's something that would work for you, because it is a good script.
I also have one. And
yeah, Sabrina's I'm sure is good too.
Having competition now, Andy.
Well, the key here is try one for a significant amount of time before switching to the other one. Whichever one it is, whether it's Sabrina's or mine, I'm sure they're both good. I haven't looked at Sabrina's lately, so I don't know how it differs from mine, but I'm sure there's similarities between the two. Because we're kind of similar in the way that we talk, I think, and our demeanor. So I would imagine they're very close anyway.
Mark, you're back.
Hey, thanks. I really appreciate the webinar. I want to come back. I've learned a lot today, so I do appreciate it.
Hey, Mark, you're in the same company as Brooks, so
awesome.
Nice.
I'm curious if anyone's using leads in like a team environment. If they have like a junior advisor working with them or someone else on their team where they're sharing maybe a list, or how that might work. I'm not there right now, but it's something in the back of my head. So I'm just kind of curious if people are doing that.
I call for a portfolio manager based out of Vancouver. I actually have a script that's tailored for booking for somebody else. It works, but like, you just got to make sure they have the right like tonality, because I've definitely had advisors where it just did not work out for them having someone call for them, because you're going to be the best person to book a consultation for you. Like being relatable and like knowing the knowledge, but sometimes that also bites you, because then you're like getting too into product right away. I've definitely listened into advisors where I'm like, stop it. Like you never even met them yet. Don't get into product. But I can share my script if you're like thinking about hiring somebody to do calling for you.
Yeah, and please, if anybody can answer that question for Kevin, please do. At Planswell 1.0, I don't know, Rob, if you remember this, but we had something called the Double Dragon, and that was basically where a new hire, like a new Plan Pro, which is what I was, would be making the dials. They'd go through, you know, the iteration of the script back then, and then they'd book a meeting, and then they'd say something like, "Oh, you know, Sabrina, just so you know, at the time that you booked an hour with me to go through your plan, Andy, our senior advisor, is actually available. Would you mind if he comes on the call with us?" Right? He's a great guy. He's one of the senior guys. He's old like you. I mean, he would never say that, but you know, and so then the prospect thinks, "Oh man, I'm getting even more value now. I'm getting somebody that's up on a pedestal." Then the junior person would make the call or be on the Zoom call or whatever with me, and then almost act like the advocate for the prospect. Like they're on your side. "Hey, you know, Sabrina, Andy and I have talked about you. I've shared what you mentioned about your dream outcome, what's on your mind and all that. Do I have that right? Anything else you want to add, or any questions that maybe came up since we last talked? Yes or no?" Okay, well, look, Sabrina, without further ado, I'm going to pass you over to Andy, right? And then I come in, I'm like, "Hey, how are you?" Like completely confident. This person, this prospect thinks, "Oh, they've gotten moved up the chain," right? Now they're talking to the big guy. And, you know, at that point, you know, I'd already closed like 200 clients. So I didn't really care. I was like, I'm not going to lose this. And would just, you know, that junior person would now listen to the way that I conduct a consultation. And it was never about the numbers, right? It was about analogies and stories. And you sound just like another client of mine who was in the same situation. And here's what we did. How does that sound? Oh, that sounds great. Perfect. So they were already saying, "I want to do this," before I even cross the T's and dot the I's on the numbers, right? I can tell you this unequivocally. The Double Dragon worked 100% of the time. I closed every single Double Dragon appointment that was set up. And the Double Dragon was important because we were having BDRs that were booking appointments for the advisors. And I said, "Guys, this isn't working great because I have to go build the rapport from scratch with this person that you just booked an hour meeting with. They don't know me from a hole in the wall. The BDR didn't take proper notes." That's where the Double Dragon came from, was no, you got to have that. It really helps if you have that transfer of rapport with the person who booked the meeting being on the initial meeting and doing the handoff and then dipping off if they want. And Sabrina, I think you do that, right? So in some cases, you don't do that?
No, it's never a handoff.
Okay. Then there's another advisor that does that where they actually do the handoff, right? Where the person who booked it shows up initially at the beginning of the call and then hands it off and then dips off. Now I book an hour meeting.
That's something I've been thinking about. Just out of my workload, and a lot of my calls now are recruiting advisors. I'm more on that focal is my point. But you know, with the plans, those leads that I already have, with other referrals that I already have, you know, so I've been hovering over that. And I'm kind of answering my question as I talk about that, but kind of like letting go of the reins a little bit. And you know, all of us are oftentimes control freaks. I know I am, but I just have moments like I'm like, am I giving away? Like, hey, you probably could have got that appointment, right? But I could have got that appointment maybe very hard that person that they may not be equipped with, but probably training and develop that person on. So how do we get to that point? 43, 43. How do we get to that point of like being okay? Like letting go, right? So it's like crazy.
Sorry, Michael, I think you're breaking up a little bit. Did you get that?
Oh, sorry.
Is he asking when do you find the point where you can kind of let go of the reins?
You can do it from the beginning or after you've done some calling, you kind of have a sense of what to expect. There was an advisor, I'm not sure if he's still part of Planswell or not, who he basically hired seniors to make his calls because they didn't even care about the money. They just wanted to continue to have a purpose, right? And think about a senior speaking to somebody about retirement. You've got a really unique perspective. Here's what I wish I had done. Or, hey, Michael, when I was your age, that's what I thought. But now that I'm retired, this is what's really going on. And I wish I could have spoken to somebody like Andy. I would have been in a better position. And why I'm so passionate and why I agree to work and make these calls for Andy, because I wish somebody had reached out to me and told me this stuff. Like, think about that angle. It's amazing. Right? And somebody who's retired or whatever doesn't have that pressure, right? They're just happy to be talking and be vital, right? So it's an idea, right? Is get, or, not to be ageist about it. I mean, it doesn't matter what the age is, but I kind of love the idea that he got people that were already retired calling other people about retirement. It makes perfect sense.
And how was his success rate? Presumably good, Andy?
Yeah, he was getting 200 leads a month. And I don't know, maybe Sabrina or Aaron was correct me.
Andy?
It was Nick. Nick.
Oh, the Italian guy.
Yeah, he's in the.
Castellano.
Yeah, he's in. I think we did a partner interview with him. He's in the archives. I think he was bringing in like 5 million of AUM a month.
Wow.
Right. And he had a team of like 2 or 3 dialers, I think, or seniors that were calling. I think he also had some young people too, right? Like he had some 20-year-olds, 20-somethings, and he had some seniors that were doing the dialing. And yeah, and so they were properly working through. Imagine 200 leads a month that you've got to call 10 to 12 times. That's a lot of dials. Right? But for him, it was a no-brainer, right? An absolute no-brainer. And he wasn't doing the heavy lifting. He was just, doing the consultations. And the conversations, I think, that the seniors were having were much more in line with what you should be talking about on these calls, is just connecting and having a chat, not diving into the weeds about stuff and telling stories and things that are relatable, right? And I think to a certain degree, that's why I had a lot of success at Planswell 1.0 as opposed to the rest of the Plan Pros, because if you remember, Rob, they were all 20-somethings at a university and I was 49. So I could relate to just about anybody that I got on the phone. I remember when I was that age, or, yep, I'm hoping to be there in a few years. I could talk about being a homeowner and having health issues or whatever it was, whereas somebody who was younger would have to think about what their parents maybe went through or something. It was, so that relatability, I really think it's worth it to explore getting the senior to do calls.
Do you compensate them per lead or per hour?
I don't know what his payment structure is. But obviously you have to figure out how does it relate to how you get paid, right? Some people get paid by, some structures they get paid per hour, then they get paid a bonus if the person shows up, and then they get paid a bonus if that person becomes a client. Right? That way the dialer is invested in that person showing up.
Right.
And if they don't show up, they're invested in getting that person back on the phone to show up.
So that's how in a place like that, so the handoff is really just to make a one-on-one appointment to talk to me.
That's right. Which is what the purpose of that first outreach is to find a schedule the time to talk again.
Right.
And so, Andy, in the case of this fellow Nick, who has the seniors and others calling for him, does one of those seniors also show up? Is it a double dragon kind of scene?
No, I don't think it's a double dragon situation. I
think I was confused on what you said earlier, Andy. Do you mean I show up to the actual consultation and bridge the rapport there?
Yeah, at the beginning.
Oh yeah.
Handoff. Yeah, because I thought you and I talked about it, so I was like, "Uh-oh, I'm going."
I thought you meant like I call them and then I'm like, oh wait, he's right here.
No. So you do the double dragon then. So
Yeah.
so Sabrina actually does the double dragon. Yeah, that's what I meant. This that you do the handoff live in a way at that set time. Yeah. I don't know, Rob, but I know Eric has talked to Nick a bunch of times, so feel free to reach out to Eric. He'll know more than me.
Okay. I just wanted to say one thing about Andy, having worked with Andy and known him for years. For everybody's, I don't know, confidence, Andy was routinely the top person. So he absolutely is worth listening to.
Thanks, Rob.
You're not paying me for that. I'm just telling the truth. And I was there, so I know that. And I checked all the data.
Andy's the GOAT.
Thanks, Rob. I appreciate the endorsement.
But there was a question in the chat.
I think he's pretty cool too. How do we reach Eric?
Oh, I was just talking to Rob because Rob and Eric know each other. I can ask the question about. Actually, I'm not even sure what the question was now. You know what? I think it might be mentioned in the interview. I think we did interview. I'll try to find the interview now before this session's over, so you can see it because I think he talks about it in the interview, but that was a while back.
I'm sure people would like to know the format of the compensation, the structure, and it may translate a little differently across borders, but like how much you have to pay people, what I think the bonus structures makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I'd be curious to know that as well if you could do that.
Yeah, well, I know one of the advisors that I've actually that Eramos and I worked with. He basically paid this woman. She was in her 40s, I think. He paid her $19 an hour for the dialing. Then she got I think she got like a $50 or $100 bonus
50.
if they showed up, and then she got a percentage bonus of whatever the compensation was, either for the first year or if it was an insurance policy, it was a certain percentage as a bonus. So wasn't
I recall $50. I recall $50 per meeting.
Yeah, for the show, but he also gave her a bonus if he closed them.
Right.
I'm kind of thinking of just finding some clients that would like to do this. They already know us and what we do for them. How much more relatable and believable could they be?
Well,
you certainly want to get testimonials, that's for sure.
All right, I'm going to throw this question out there. This is probably one for Andy. So I believe the name is Hital. Yeah, I'm not sure if you want to come up screen, but the one about they reached somebody and said, "Don't send me an email," which I thought was kind of interesting. And I don't remember doing it. I don't remember doing anything. So I assume I don't remember doing the plan. Is Hital still here? Oh yeah.
Yeah. I'm here. Yeah. So today I tried to call some household, and I got the success for one meeting the next week, and another one we discussed very thoroughly, just like Andy is saying something double dragon kind of stuff. So because we are working in a team, so the finance advisor was with me, and then we have a good discussion. But almost out of I tried to call 8 people, but out of 8, 6 household, only 2 didn't pick up, but I think one didn't pick up, but 4 or 5. One person was telling me that he don't remember or like about anything, and then I tried to give him all the information, but then at like within 2 minutes I was thinking that he's gonna hang up the call, so I say, okay, if you don't mind, can I send you an email? He said, no, sorry, I'm not interested. Don't send me any email. I don't know. I fill out any questionnaires or not, but don't send me email. So that's the thing. So what should be the next step? Another one also not interested, and they doesn't want to at least today I got the success that because last time I heard that Andy was telling that between 9 to 11 you should call. So I tried that strategy, and I have Andy's script in front of me, and that was working for me. So at least like I'm in a proper path. But when the person is saying that I don't remember, and don't send me an email, so what should be the next step?
Well, when they say they don't remember, you kind of just, for me, I just agree with them. I said, oh, I totally understand. I don't remember why I walked in the room sometimes. Be that as it may, you did fill this out on this date. And, pro tip for anybody here, if you go into view edit plan and you go under profile, you'll see referred by, and that'll tell you what platform they did it in: Facebook, Google, organic search, referral link, whatever. So when you can speak confidently that they did it, it kind of helps grease the wheels that they did it. And then I kind of, say, I understand that you didn't do it, or you don't remember doing it. You clicked on Facebook, looks like it was yesterday afternoon. You answered a bunch of questions. A little squirrel did some calculations, but even if you don't remember doing it, if I could ask, why might you have done it? Why might you have filled out a questionnaire like this? What's going on for you in terms of retirement? And just transition away from Planswell anyway, because the questionnaire isn't really that important, right? Like, nobody should be following the advice that they got from filling out this questionnaire, because there's no context or story built around it. Anyway, we don't even know if the numbers are accurate, and they're probably not. Even if somebody ballpark things very close, that's still a hypothetical plan. For me, in resending an email about something, I wouldn't even just ask. I'd just offer to say, hey, since you said you didn't get it, I totally understand. I'm going to resend it to you. Right? And then you can bid them farewell and then call them back a day or two later, just a courtesy call to see if you got the email with your plan results. Because when people hear courtesy call, it immediately lowers sales resistance a couple notches, right? Ask yourself that. If I called you out of the blue and said, hey, Kevin, this is Andy. This is just a courtesy call. Immediately, you loosen up a bit, right? Because it's like, okay, it's a courtesy call. It's not a sales call, right? I know that works for me. So try saying this is a courtesy call, right? But anyway, Hito, that's the best thing I can say is, or just send it anyway. What's the harm? The guy's already told you he doesn't remember doing it. Send it to him anyway and call him back a few days later or the next day anyway, and say, hey, I'm just calling to make sure that you got it because you didn't remember doing this. And you can see that you did, and take it from there. You're gonna, what's that famous Gretzky thing? You miss every shot you don't take, or whatever. So just try it. And you're going to hear people say they don't remember doing it. I hope everybody on this call knows absolutely they did it. Unequivocally, they did it. Unless somebody came in, stole their phone, filled out a questionnaire, and then replaced the phone back, they did it. And we all know that the reality, they did it. Maybe their spouse did it and didn't tell them and used their phone. That's a possibility, but it's unlikely.
And it doesn't matter. You could always, if you ever get those, you have the opportunity to resend them the plan anyways. So that shouldn't be an objection, or it shouldn't be a legitimate objection anyways. But we are near time, guys. I want to thank everyone. This has been a really good plan craft session. Brooks, congratulations on an absolutely incredible week. And we are so looking forward. Guys, if it's not in your calendar, this Monday too, there's an Andy Ermos live, but the next Monday, we get to spend an entire 30, 45 minutes with Brooks, and he's going to spill all the secrets of how he's absolutely killing it here on Planswell. All right, everyone, have a wonderful rest of the week, and we will see you next time and on Monday.
All right. Bye-bye.